everybody. What's going on? Welcome to This Week in Mormons. Man, that fades out fast. I wish I could change that setting. That's just like gone. It's gone. Welcome to our special Temple Predictions, the podcast part 3. I don't know. Joe, you served your mission next to France, and with, Walloons, is that the appropriate way to say 3 in French?
I have no idea.
Trois?
Yeah.
Yes, trois. Trois. I believe this is the third time we have done this wonderful exercise. I'm Jeff Openshaw, your founder and major lover from TWIM, and I'm joined, of course, by longtime TWIM cheerleader who does not want to be identified as our social media manager anymore. So I'm just going to call him
only because I've been slacking on the job for the last few years. I haven't really done anything.
Well, you've been busy. You have a life. You have a family too.
So all the hate that the commenters give, it's not directed toward me anymore, which is kind of nice sometimes.
No, it's not. It's very much at me. It's very much at me. I want to be like, we are Legion, like that kind of thing. Like, just ignore.
You could say it's me. It's fine. Anyway, I'll be your.
I'm always. I know. I want to be on the lookout. I would love to have someone actually manage our Facebook page and not have me worry about it. If you're a longtime listener and would be interested in doing that, you just go ahead and shoot me an email, Jeff, Geoff, at thisweekinmormons.com. We can talk. Like, seriously, I would love not to deal with managing that thing. I schedule most of the posts and then don't worry about it.
It can be a brute. It can be a time suck, big time.
Dynamite. Yeah, man. So, Joe, you like to join us primarily to talk temples, but how's life been for you up there? And
yeah,
in the old 801,
I'm right in the Beehive. We live about a mile from Temple Square, so about as close as you can get. Maybe 2 miles, actually. But yeah, things are pretty good here. People are getting vaccinated, so that's good news in the COVID era. Yeah, it's pretty chill. We're coming into spring. The weather's getting nicer.
That means you're about a mile from the Red Iguana.
I am like 3 blocks from the Red Iguana, dude. Come and visit.
Oh my goodness! Do you guys walk there? Do you ever go there, like when it's open?
No, because everyone on the west side knows to go to Red Iguana 2. Red Iguana, the original Red Iguana is kind of where all of like the people from the east.
It's where the tour.
100%. It's the same food.
Or the people from the east. It's where all the people. It's where all the people from.
That's what I was going to say.
Like,
also known as tourists.
But you people, you real people, you people who you probably commingle with the West Valley lot as well. You guys are all the weird south of the airport people. Yes.
The environs around Glendale that unites us on the west side here.
Oh man, well, I'm excited to do our special show here before conference. Sorry, it's a little late getting our Temple Prediction podcast out. Of course, you can go to thisweekinmormons.com and read the predictions. We've done that in written form for I don't even know how many years now. But podcasting them is a little bit of a newer effort, but it's fun to have a discussion about it at the same time. Before we get into this, though, I want to help thank the sponsor for this show. That's right, we don't do tons of sponsors on TWIM, but this one's too cool to ignore, and I don't have sponsors unless I genuinely think the product is worthwhile, all right? I am not just simply some money grubber. So this one is super great. I love this. So I was perusing a little weeks ago, a month or so ago, a little blog to help out with Come Follow Me, particularly for my kids. I have young kids. And we were feeling kind of stuck when it comes to the church manuals in terms of getting them to pay attention. And it's been harder, of course, with COVID and everything and doing church at home. And they had a little link down there for this service at yourhousepress.com. And what this is, it's called Your House Press. And basically they print the weekly scripture for Come Follow Me on newspaper, and then you hang it up with clips or a hanger or what have you. The idea is to facilitate discussion in your home, whether it's with roommates or your kids or a spouse, or even if you're by yourself, whatever it may be. And to just have something more to talk about with the scripture, to see it there. And they'll send you shipments monthly or however you sign up. You can subscribe in different ways. And you'll get these printed on newspaper, shipped as newspaper, by the way, to save cost on shipping. And then you just hang them up and you have something cool to talk about. And the whole aesthetic of it's great. If you're a Helvetica fan, if you're a Helveticaite, I think you'll be a fan of what they're doing.
Yeah, calling it a scripture printed on newspaper to hang up sounds maybe a lot less appealing than how it looks. It's very beautiful. It looks really cool. Yeah.
Paint for us a word.
It's there's a lot of use of white space, or in this case with black ink, black space. It's clean font. It's
yes.
very artful in the way that it's presented, and it's a really cool, kind of a statement piece that you can put up, but not feel bad about ripping down and throwing in the trash when the next one comes, I guess. Or save them.
That's also true. Thank you for explaining that, Joe, because it is a little bit hard to
Yeah.
verbalize how they look. It's more than just the scripture. And also because it has sort of a pull quote at the top, something that, like, there's examples here from the Book of Mormon, but like this says, the Lord labors with us. Then it says Jacob 5:7. Then it has some of the verses down below that are relevant. Anyways, it's a great conversation piece, something really neat. So they have been nice enough to let TWIM listeners, if you go to Your House Press, you're the possessive, YOUR, housepress.com. And if you use the promo code first month, you'll get 50% off your first month. So check that out. We're really thankful.
And click on Ways to Hang to see an example of what it looks like.
Yes, but we'll have an add up on this post and everything on the website, so you can see the visual as well, of course. So thanks to Your House Press for that. And without further ado,
let's dive in.
Joseph, shall we speak about how we are the greatest temple?
I mean, we are. We were just talking about how maybe this edition is not our strongest list. But if you take into consideration our record and our longevity, that's not a hard statement to make. We are definitely the greatest.
Yeah, this is kind of like The Office season 8.
I never even made it.
That's where we are.
That one.
Still entertaining, but maybe not as much of a sure thing as it was before. And I'm with you on that too. I think I'll say this fully up front. I think some of our honorable mentions we might get to at the end might actually be some of the better shots than the ones we picked. But we've written about this for so long that I think sometimes it's fun to pull. We have also want to have fun writing and predicting, and perhaps even finding a reason to jackhammer in our idea.
And many of our honorable mentions have been written about before too. We've
and there's that too, and we link to those as well. Like if we've written about them, we provide a hyperlink to it, so you can check out our rationale for that. So it's also to mix it up and make it so you're not basically reading what could be a post that is 70% the same as the last time around, because we're just holding over all the same ones that we're not
evergreen content.
You know what's funny, Joe? I was telling you how impressed I have been that you predicted the second temple in Sao Paulo, which I still think is awesome because you kind of came out of nowhere with that prediction. But I found an old article we'd written together from probably, it's been a while, 2015, 2016, probably after 2016. And you actually mentioned that. You mentioned that second temple in Sao Paulo. It might have been your article when you say should second temples be in the
wake
norm
of Lima's
in some of these big urban conglomerations? Yeah. Exactly. And one of the ones you mentioned way back then, it was probably about 5 years ago now, was Sao Paulo. So even though I didn't remember it at the time.
Well, here we are, man.
You're a wise boy. Yeah, we got some good announcements last time. And we had Kiribati finally got the temple announced for there, Sao Paulo. We talked for a while about a second one in Guatemala City, and now that's happening.
Well, and don't forget Arkansas. I mean, it wasn't last time, but Arkansas finally got that long overdue. You had written about it many, many times.
Good old Bentonville. I know. I feel like I willed that one into existence. Just me, right?
Get credit.
So, of course, words of caution up front, everybody. If you remember, like, we know we don't speak for the church. I also don't think this is a bad exercise. There's some who I've seen might say, well, why is that kind of like predicting callings and stuff like that? I don't think it's quite along those lines, because we speculate about calling openings in our wards. That's natural, I think, as people. But temple predictions, it's really just looking at church numbers, demographics, distance to temples, all sorts of data points like that do inform where they go. And that's probably why we've had some success in the past, because the church looks at the same things. And like we know from Doctrine and Covenants, I am every belief and confidence that the brethren look at the data points and then ask if things are right. They come to conclusions and they check with God about what to do. And at the same time, as President Nelson has intimated, I think there might be other times where simply a temple gets announced because he's felt the inspiration to do so. And that's also obviously totally great. And that's when you get temples in places like Linden, Utah, that we would never have thought of in the first place. So just remember all that as we're talking about this. We put all these things together. And again, you can read all of these and see a great interactive map that we've been maintaining for years that has all the temple locations, their status, and how much of an area they take in terms of a 200-mile radius from the temple location. It's just a cool way to visualize where the temples are and where they might be to serve.
Let's do a quick free boost to the Church of Jesus Christ Temples.org. Do you know him, the guy that maintains it? It's a work of love, man. And we rely on it heavily for a lot of our
Rick
data.
Satterfield Rick Satterfield lives in Pocatello, Idaho. I know him in the sense that we are both, Latter-day Saint influencers. No, nothing like that. But I've corresponded with Rick in the past. But I think he's a legend far beyond anything I could ever hope to achieve because he's been made. His website
100%.
is
It's
better than
just
the church's
amazing.
website on temples, pretty much. So, they're very humble about it. He doesn't want to draw attention to himself, but it's a very powerful resource. And yes, we do pull for that for some data points, as well as we want to thank our friend Corey Ward, who has been doing some writing for us over the past year about temples in general. He also maintains some interesting spreadsheets, and there are others in the community as well. Matt Martinick over there at ldschurchgrowth.blogspot.com, also interesting insights to offer up there. So thanks to the whole community who does that. I think there's great perspectives all around on all of this. All right, I'll kick off then because we're just going to go in order. Brazil doesn't have enough temples, Joe. It just simply doesn't. I mean, yeah, they've got a lot right now. And of course, the saddest thing with Brazil right now is that the Rio de Janeiro temple has been done for a year, but they've not been able to dedicate it because of COVID. It's never been dedicated. So it can't be, they want to have the open house. They want to have all this stuff around that. I mean, they could, in theory, just go quietly dedicate it one weekend and then plop it into phase 2 and let it be what it is. Right. But they don't want to do that, of course. So that's unfortunate for Brazil. I'm assuming any forthcoming temple announcements for that country or others COVID doesn't matter quite as much. It's just the unfortunate circumstance that temples like Brazil or like mine in DC, we can't.
They're just waiting in the wings.
Circumstance. So here's one that's kind of close to your beloved Sao Paulo that you mentioned, and Rio in a sense. I will pronounce it very gringo-ish. Belo Horizonte, which
I thought you were
beautiful horizon.
Brazilian,
I'm assuming
now,
from
Jeff.
Portuguese. Eu não falo português. And we all know Portuguese. If you want to speak Portuguese, just go. That's how you speak Portuguese.
That's a good impression.
I just did it for you. Thank you. So, Belo Horizonte, I think this is a strong choice here. Now, we know it is currently part of the, I believe, the Salvador, Brazil Temple District, if I'm not mistaken, which is, the Campinas, Brazil, not Salvador, the Campinas Temple District. I assume it's going to be placed in Rio's Temple District. Whenever Rio's done, they haven't announced that Temple District. But this is an area, it's still far enough away from Rio or Campinas. There's a good number of members. I think it follows a lot of what's happened elsewhere for Brazil getting temples. And so,
yeah, man,
I'm all about this, and it's outside the 200-mile zone, my friend, even though I don't know if that's a metric we use as much now as we did in the past. But if you're looking between Campinas, Rio, Brasilia is getting a temple, there's a nice little spot right there in the middle where Belo Horizonte.
Yeah, and it is in the middle. I think you could, it could clave off stakes from more than just the Rio de Janeiro district, which we don't even know what it is because, it hasn't been dedicated yet. But it's nestled right in there. What's wild to me, just looking at the article, is the photo that you picked. Man, that city's huge. At least it looks huge. And it's like, yeah,
it's like every Brazilian
it's like Chinese cities and Brazilian cities are all like this. But I mean, it just goes to show there are massive amounts of people that live far enough away, from traveling to a temple and in a place like Brazil, where you're dealing with just a certain percentage of members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It's just, if there's a city that big at this point in the game, it probably ought to have a temple.
I wonder where Belo Horizonte is in terms of the just its overall, its population compared to all Brazil. I mean, look at this. So it is the 6th largest city of Brazil with a population of 2.7 million people and a metropolitan area of 12.7 million people. It's the 13th largest city in South America and the 18th largest.
It's kind of behind the 8 ball here with
completely
with getting a temple. I think it's a little bit late in the game. Also they've got 5 stakes maybe right there in the city itself, plus another 5 kind of right around the orbit. So,
but is that the issue, that it's so large and it should perhaps be even more densely Latter-day Saints for a city an area that large?
I don't know. I mean, I think if we're talking along the Wasatch Front, that's more of an argument. But internationally, I think
Utah is just. We'll get to Utah. I just don't think Utah can be used for comparison for anywhere else at this stage. It just doesn't. It's operating from a different playbook.
There. One thing I want to talk about, though, is looking at Horizonte, looking at Vitoria area. I think even those stakes could potentially be part of that. If you're looking to kind of create a critical mass of, maybe upwards of 12 or 15 stakes in the district, I think that would fit too. So
and
Vitoria
where is Vitoria? Where is that?
it's on the coast. It's on the
I'm looking on a
coast.
map
I'm
right
not
now.
on the
I'm just
map
not
yet, so
seeing.
yeah. But
Okay.
yeah, for example, like if you go just to the
Oh, I see. I see Vitoria de Conquista, which is like just outside the 200-mile zone from Salvador, but it's not on the
maybe that's
coast.
what I'm talking about. Let me see here. Well, I don't know. I looked at a map. I don't
I
know,
don't know what
man.
you're
I looked
talking
at a map
about.
and I was like, oh yeah, those
Villa
ones.
Vella,
Okay, no, I'm talking about
Teixeira de Freitas, which means fried Texans.
Vitoria, and then right underneath it, there's a Villa Velha, and they are on the coast. There's 3 stakes right there.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
But yeah,
Okay. Okay. I'm
let's
in.
do
I'm
it.
in.
Yeah, I think
Let's do that
you
one
could
too.
make a
We'll do the.
sizable temple
It'll be
district
great.
there for sure.
Oh, by the way, as an aside, I want to give a shout out as well to the temple matrix that's maintained by just love Latter-day Saints who love this stuff like we do. So if you go to sites.google.com/view/temple matrix,
Oof.
we'll link to it. And we've also tweeted about it recently. They aggregate temple predictions from the many of us who do that sort of thing and then score it based on the prevalence of the predictions. So it's just basically a way to see across the interwebs and all of us doing this how things are ranking in that sense. So with all of that, they believe so. Belo Horizonte, for example, is ranked 6 right now, and it's actually appeared on 63%
Hey.
of lists that they are
Okay.
cataloging that have done this. So others that we might reference if they're on the list, we can also see how they gel or jive with the temple matrix. So I'm giving this one I'm
For
giving this one
sure.
like a B plus.
Strong
I
pick.
think.
I think
Yeah.
definitely stronger than my next one. I don't even know if anybody else put Fort Worth on the Temple Matrix but us. And by us I mean me.
It does say it's well. There is listed number 2 on the matrix is
Oh,
Austin and others, Texas. So if this qualifies for
that's just a way to get.
and
Yeah.
others,
Well, let me tell you why I think
then
it's
there you
probably a
go.
better pick than what some of the numbers would suggest. This is kind of in the same vein
All right, hit me.
of, what I was thinking with Sao Paulo, just big metropolitan areas that have been serviced for a long time by one temple, but, maybe deserve a second look to see if there are, other enclaves of stakes or saints within that area that that could feed into a new temple district. Obviously, in mega cities like Lima or Sao Paulo, there's the issue of transportation from one end to another can often be how long it takes to drive 200 miles or 2 hours in the States or whatever. But this is looking at the states,
Yeah.
looking at a state like Texas that has large cities and large population, and also a lot of members. I do think, in terms of stateside temple districts, that we're not seeing too many that have 25 plus stakes anymore these days. And so essentially to see Dallas Temple with what was it, 28 stakes, that kind of like made my temple prediction sensors go, oh, you know what? Let's take a look here. And so I think Fort Worth, it's kind of its own main city, sister city to Dallas. And I definitely think it has enough of a dividing line of the cluster. We talked about maybe doing this in Vegas, where could Vegas sustain a second temple, but it's hard to figure out kind of like where the existing stakes are, like how those clusters sort of divide. But, in
Yeah.
Fort Worth, I think it makes a little bit more sense. And so, I think it's a pretty strong guess.
Yeah, it's hard in Vegas because like Summerlin's a geographically obvious choice, but there's more members down south
Yeah.
and
And
east
same problem
that
with the
tend to go
Gilbert
east.
Temple too, is
Uh,
that like, so the Gilbert Temple is so easily accessible on the freeway that it's really hard to divide. Even though there a lot of stakes adhere to that district, it's hard to divide it because everyone can get there pretty easily. So,
so I admit I don't know how I
oh
feel
come
about
on,
Fort Worth. I mean, I have my own Texas prediction later on. And the funny thing is, it's also not Austin. Honestly, Austin maybe is the better pick of all of Texas for these reasons. I don't know. I like where you're going with it. I think you love the idea of second
I
temples and
do. I don't know why,
metroplexes.
but
And
I do.
there's almost 8 million people in the Dallas Fort Worth metroplex. And I don't know, not living there, I don't know how complicated it is. If you live way on the western edge by Fort Worth, is it a pain to get up north of Dallas to where the temple is? The temple's also an 80s temple. That's one of those stake center style ones I like to call. So it's not huge. So maybe, but I don't know. I don't know if it's there. I don't know if it's there.
I remember
I don't
just being a
can't
kid and going
I
on the
can't totally
long
support you
road
on this,
trip
Joe.
from Lawton, Oklahoma, down to Dallas because that was our temple back then when my older siblings were doing temple trips, and I would go tag along. And so, yeah, there's a lot of people there, man. That city is huge. And I think there's a lot of members there too. So I don't know. We'll see. It could happen.
Yeah. It could be. It could be. I mean, Texas right now has the Dallas Temple, the Houston Temple, the San Antonio Temple, the Lubbock Temple handling Panhandle and its environs. And then, of course, there's the new one going in way down there.
El Paso?
Starts with an M. I'm forgetting. No, not El Paso. No, all the way down at the bottom. McAllen, thank you. All the way down to McAllen, which is the bottom of Texas on the Mexican border. They're getting one too. So it's a pretty good spread. It would be interesting if they actually got one, just a second one in the Metroplex, especially when Houston's also such a huge city.
But not as many members.
Here's another holdover from before, but this one I feel like is getting increasingly likely given the way things have been going. I'm calling this one Smithfield, Utah, but this could really just be northern Cache Valley, Utah. It might be Smithfield. It might be across the border, like in Preston, Idaho. I think they'd keep it in Utah just to continue the whole Utah bragging train about temples in Utah. Like, why give another one to Idaho? Really? I mean, if Coeur d'Alene can't get its act together,
right,
just give one to Preston. Yeah. I mean, come on. So
or call it the Bear Lake,
the Bear Lake Smithfield. Temple. It's very. They could call it the Bear Lake, Idaho / Utah Temple. It's an interesting spot because a lot of the temples that have been going up in Utah, pretty much all of the ones announced of late, have all been in the Wasatch Front, very much in the dense corridor between Provo and Ogden at this stretch, not even going beyond that. I mean, the Payson Temple predates that a little bit, like Brigham City as well. Everything else has been in between that, whether it's Linden, Orem, Saratoga Springs, Taylorsville, what is now Deseret Peak and was once Tooele, which
I need to know more about that saga.
Or Kaysville, Syracuse. Oh, okay, that could be a fun digression because it's a
give me the quick rundown, the little Reader's Digest version.
No, the church announced a temple. Yeah. We've talked about it on TWIM a lot, but the church announced a temple in Tooele, in the Tooele Valley, and they were going to build it in a town called Erda, which is sort of equidistant between Tooele, Grantsville, and Stansbury Park, the kind of big three cities in the area. That's great. And they announced as part of it, they were going to build a residential community around it. Unofficial sources say this is because it gets the municipality to foot the bill to build the utilities, which makes building the temple more viable because the temple was going to be built pretty much on farmland. So there was not a lot of existing infrastructure to get it there. Residents in the area, which is, again, very agricultural. Erda is not a little bedroom community like the other ones in question, did not like the residential plan. Some activists were
didn't want to become
against
a suburb,
it, even though they loved the church and wanted a temple there, but they thought it was too dense, even though the lots were they called it dense housing, and the lots were half-acre lots, but okay, whatever. And so this got to the point that the church last year announced they weren't going to do the housing development at all anymore, but that's all they said about it, so we assumed the temple was just going to go in as it was. And then a few months ago, the church announced it was relocating the temple site itself into Tooele itself, and at the same time renaming it the Deseret Peak Utah Temple, which is a peak to the southwest of the Tooele Valley, even though now it's more properly in.
They just didn't want people to call it the Thule Temple.
I don't know. And they haven't announced whether they're going to try to have any kind of a development around it or anything like that. But it's kind of funny that they've moved the design of the temples. The design's going to be the same. All of it's going to be the same, but they moved the location 2 miles down the highway. So anyway, I guess we don't consider Tooele Wasatch Front. But it's close. I mean, you could live in Stansbury Park or wherever.
I've known people that have.
Just around the river bend.
All right. Well, thanks for catching me up on that. Yes. That one kind of fell through my gaps of current events.
That's all right. So here's the deal. Cache Valley, a little bit more removed. Logan's up there, and that's the big deal. The Logan, Utah Temple is there. It's one of the oldest temples in the church, second temple dedicated after St. George in Utah. There's 43 stakes feeding that temple right now, which even for Utah is a very big number. That's a lot. So it's crowded, obviously. A lot of stakes feeding it, and we've been splitting up stake feeding of that quantity and building more temples elsewhere. Like Ogden, for example, had a very large number of stakes feeding it, but now they're building temples in Kaysville and Syracuse, which will probably pull from there and from the Bountiful Temple. So that alone tells you something's got to give here. This might not be a major population center compared to elsewhere, but there are a lot of stakes going there. And of course, some of those are student stakes because of Utah State. But still, it's 43 stakes. That's a lot. So putting it in the northern part of the valley, there's a lot of stakes up that way. That would space it out. And I also think that because of our move to rehabilitate a lot of the pioneer era temples of the church, for better and worse, a little bit, but thankfully Manti is not totally dead. I think the Logan Temple is like the most needing of that, of any of these temples. The Logan Temple was completely gutted in the 70s, completely. None of the original floor plan exists. They built it inside the shell of the old temple, and it's nothing
It's
wow
almost at this
factory
point,
at
it's almost
all when
been
you go
kind of
in
like a
there.
twin running bit that you include on anytime the Logan Temple comes up, is that you remind listeners that
Sorry.
no, don't say sorry. I just mean like it's obviously
It's the
been needing
pressure
to happen for
campaign.
a long time, right? And the interior is very dated, I guess is a good way to put it. And yeah, it could be the timing is right. And for whatever reason, I just feel like, and this is just my own geographical ignorance of that part of Utah, I think I've only been to Logan once in my life, but outside of Logan, I just feel like Cache Valley is a bunch of old people that go to the temple twice a week, and that's kind of the image in my head. And so you got some decent very faithful, stalwart
How
members up
dare
there,
you?
that are heavy temple attenders. And, that's obviously got to be considered in the mix, particularly with, I think, Intermountain West temples is, you look at not just like membership rates, but you look at attendance rates and things like that. And so if the Logan Temple is pretty heavily attended, then, it would make sense that you would want to kind of relieve that area, especially if they're about to, close it for 4 years or whatever.
Yeah. And that's what I would think. But I would think either like, would they close it in advance, or would they announce a new temple in the area, build that temple, which would still take like 3+ years. And then once that one is there and it can absorb take some of the heat, and
Yeah.
then Brigham City could take some of it as well, then do they close Logan for a long time? I guess my only question is that would actually protract that process, because we've already got the other 3 pioneer temples are the processes are in the
True.
works to do this. And so are we going to wait 4 more years before
Yeah.
we even touch Logan?
Maybe. I mean, at
I
this
don't
point,
know.
it's all
And then
future
will
casting,
President
because how many
Nelson
temples
still
do we
be
have
with
even in
us
the
in
queue?
4 years? I don't know.
I mean, there's just like a lot. So it could be.
There's a lot. But I think this one's still I think this one's happening. If not this conference, it's happening like sometime soon, because it's just
To the
it's busting
Matrix.
at the
What does
seams.
everyone else think? Oh, it's number 3.
Oh,
To
to
the
the
Matrix.
Matrix. Number 3 on
Yeah.
69% of lists.
That's kind of a cool feature to put in this podcast. Sweet.
Huzzah.
Well, yeah, I think it's a good guess for sure. And I what I said in the article too, and I'll just reiterate here real quickly, is that I'm kind, I'll just say it, I'm kind of over Utah temples at this point. I feel like it's just we've had a lot lately. But this one gets a pass for me. I feel like this one is okay. You can make a good case, and a good case is a good case, I guess, no matter where it is. That
All right.
said, let's move on to oh, this is nice music. What is this?
I just wanted to be dramatic for your next one.
Oh, got it. Okay.
It's dramatic.
Yeah, man. How about let's talk about the largest Muslim country in the world, Indonesia, and the idea of maybe putting a temple there. I kind of forget that in one sense, entering the Islamic world with potential houses of worship has been something that I think the church has done for a long time, in Jordan, in Jerusalem, that kind of thing. But we also have a Dubai temple, which I feel like I've kind of razzed you over the years for predicting, but lo and behold, it came true, and I did not see that happening. So this has kind of opened my world to a whole new world of possibility of thinking about these things. And we've kind of boosted a Singapore temple, I think, for a while. I've mentioned a couple times in these articles that my parents served a mission in Malaysia back in the day, and saw a lot of pretty heavily, even though it was a humanitarian mission, they saw a lot of heavy growth membership wise there. And so we've kind of been eyeing, I think, this broader region for a while in terms of where potentially a temple could go. That's been a little bit I think challenged by fairly recent announcements in Thailand, Cambodia. But I do think there's a case to make for Jakarta. I mean, it's still far enough away. There's still, I think, a concentrated amount of membership in the capital city of Indonesia, and it would still easily service, I think, Malaysia, Singapore, other smaller countries in that area. East Timor. I mean, come on. I don't think we're going to see a temple there anytime soon. But I feel like this is kind of maybe one of those.
Not going to build one in Dili, huh? All right.
I know.
Dili's the capital.
It's a lavender blue. Dili Dili is the full name, Jeff, actually. If you recall that Disney movie.
No.
Anyway, my Indonesian guess in Jakarta. I think the interesting thing is that they're moving the capital. They're actually moving Jakarta. So in terms of like how that falls into the consideration, I'm not sure.
Well, they're not moving Jakarta. They're moving.
No, they're taking shovels and digging up the city and
Jakarta itself is going to stay where it is.
That's how I envision it in my head.
This is like Avengers Age of
put on
Ultron,
one of those like elevating helicopter like aircraft things.
Just gonna move it to Borneo, the whole thing. Jakarta's sinking like badly. Like Venice gets all the press for a sinking city, but Jakarta is way sinking, and it's not good.
Yeah, so they're moving the capital.
So Jakarta. Huh? All right. And you like Jakarta. Now I know that region's seeing growth, but you like Jakarta more than like Singapore, more than somewhere in Malaysia. You like Jakarta for the temple, and that
right? Simply because Jakarta's on the island of Java, and I think there are what did I say, like 3 stakes or something, 2 stakes and a district on the island of Java alone. Whereas a little harder to justify maybe a Singaporean temple with just 1 stake in Singapore, even though it might be more of a transportation hub. But I think there are. Just more members in Jakarta.
There are, but there are more people in Jakarta too. But at the same time, Singapore, with its 1 stake, is also the city-state of Singapore. Mm-hmm. That's it. So I haven't run the numbers on like per capita. How many members per capita in Singapore versus Jakarta. I have to imagine. I don't know if the church would have trouble building a temple in Jakarta. I doubt it, because even though Indonesia is a Muslim country, it's a bit of a different flavor of Islam, given the geographic spread from where Islam started. And it's a country that kind of prides itself a bit more on pluralism. And not all of Indonesia is Muslim, of course. I mean, you go to Bali, when there's people that are Hindu, for example. But it still factors into society a little bit. But I like to think that I don't think we'd have a major issue building there. I don't think we have trouble with we have stakes there, right? And I think people might take me to task on this. I mean, I know we have like a mission there, but I think we have proselytizing missionaries under normal non-pandemic circumstances.
I know in Malaysia they had one, at least when my parents were there, like one had to be, if one was in a white shirt, the other one had to be in like a pastel colored shirt, and they couldn't wear name tags. And they could only be invited in without like asking to be invited in, kind of thing, like vampires. Mm-hmm. But, they were still, I guess, considered proselytizing in that regard. So I guess maybe there's a broader definition of proselyting in that part of the world that I wouldn't be surprised if maybe something similar in Indonesia is like that.
I mean, there's an Indonesia Jakarta mission, which just takes up the whole country, and that's the one thing with Indonesia is it does have the 2 stakes. It's got 1 stake in Jakarta, another stake farther away in Surakarta, and then a district way over in Surabaya. So there's 3 stakes on the island of Java, but that's it for the whole country. Yeah. You don't have any other districts or stakes anywhere else on Sumatra or Sulawesi or anywhere on Borneo or anything like that. So I don't know. I don't know where it would be the best spot. I do think what's going against Singapore would be it's just slightly closer to Cambodia and Thailand and all that, even though it's definitely its own region. I don't know, man. I don't think Kuala Lumpur is in the running though right now.
Well, and considering too, like what the flow of traffic, like would it be easier for people in Singapore to travel to Jakarta, or would it be easier for members in Jakarta to travel to Singapore is kind of, I think, also part of the consideration, although I'm not quite sure, what that entails.
I'm going to be bold, Joe. Why not both? Why not both?
Let's do it, man.
Let's just do it. You did get with your, on the Matrix, you have 19%.
Ooh, what does that mean?
Jakarta shows up on lists for 19%. It means it shows up on 19% of the list.
All right, so I'm not alone. I'm not alone.
And Singapore's actually, you're not alone. It's not in the top of the list, but you've done good things, my friend. Don't worry. I'm going to bounce down to one that I don't know about this one, but I'm throwing it out there. West Africa has been a hotbed of activity and growth for the church in many years, but really in the past 15 years, it seems like it has exploded even more so. We have stakes being organized in Ghana and Nigeria and Sierra Leone and Liberia and Cote d'Ivoire and all these places. So much is going on in these countries right now, which is awesome. It's so great to see that happening. And so, I mean, if we look back a handful of years, the first temple in Africa was in Johannesburg in the
forever.
80s, and there was nothing for a long time. And then we got the temple in Nigeria over there, the one in Aba, which is a Hinckley era mini temple. And then we got a temple in Accra in Ghana, which is that mid 2000s, slightly bigger, but still small temple. Like if you've seen the temple in Redlands or Newport Beach or like Lubbock or San Antonio, like that style.
You're right about that. I always thought it was a Hinckley era one.
And then that was it for a little while. But that's been it for a little while. But now we've seen these past couple of conferences. 2 more temples announced for Nigeria, a temple in Sierra Leone. They're building a temple in Ivory Coast right now. I think Liberia's got a good chance of getting one, and I think Ghana's got a good chance of getting number 2. Ghana's has very strong church membership in general, and that's where I'm going here. Cape Coast Ghana, maybe Kumasi Ghana, and really that might be the debate as far as which one would get one, honestly. The Cape Coast region is southwest of Accra, going down the coast. There are only 2 stakes in Cape Coast proper, but there are more stakes in the environs, kind of right around it, that could make a nice regional temple. It could work. I think that's fine. I think the case for Kumasi would be not as much as regionally in terms of other stakes around it, because aren't just as many cities around Kumasi. Kumasi is a bit more in the interior, but Kumasi is also the second largest city in Ghana.
Right.
It has like 5 stakes in Kumasi itself. And it could kind of be a nice way to reach out to the rest of the interior of the country, which is much more sparsely populated still. But I think it could be either one, but I really think this could work for either. I just like that we're in a place where if there's like 5 stakes, you're like temple, man.
I mean, it's really unreal if you think about it.
Because back when, a long time ago, it'd be like, no, you got to have at least like 15 stakes before they even give you a small one, if you're lucky. Where it's a different time right now, which is great. So I don't know. I think either one could happen. I honestly don't know which one I favor more in terms of probability.
My only thought was that if it was in Kumasi, would it take those 2 stakes in Takoradi longer to get to Kumasi or to Accra, where there already is a temple? And so maybe Cape Coast offers a bit of a stronger case to include some of those environs like you talked about.
Yeah, and I could see that. I mean, definitely it would take them longer to get to I think it would take them longer to get to Kumasi than Accra.
That's what I
have to think a highway along the coast of Ghana. I have to think a highway along the coast of Ghana is going to be better developed 100%. Than the N6 road going up to Kumasi.
Well, it's a good guess. It's a I'm digging these sound effects.
It's the worst. I'm just going to ruin everybody's.
I will say, this is a new age where it's like 5 stakes or less can be a temple district in some places, but President Nelson is also just a wild card in a lot of ways, and so where he wants a temple, he says it, and
I know, right?
It's a temple. So,
well, and like here's one that we're not going to talk about at all today, but like a lot of people are saying Madagascar, for example, that it might be time for Madagascar, which doesn't have huge stuff, but it's showing up on a lot of lists, and we didn't predict it this time around. But I don't know, maybe he'll announce one in Antananarivo.
Interesting.
Who knows?
Well, this one is for you, old friend. God, I'm going to move on to Scotland because
I'm listening.
You know a little bit about Scotland, right? I mean, you've been there maybe once or twice.
Yeah, I lived there. I went to grad school.
Yes, I know.
Beautiful.
Well, this is not really a gimme for.
I love that place.
I missed.
I love it. Yes. I love Scotland. It's wonderful. Scotland is the best.
Now, I think I have predicted a temple here before in. I think I suggested Glasgow, which is clearly the better city, as we discussed in the article, but. I don't even know. I don't know. I've never been there.
Son of a... He's trolling me.
Here's the rundown, though. This would essentially be, I think, one could argue not just a temple in Scotland, but, a temple that would service Ireland as well. Potentially even both northern and regular Ireland. I guess we don't say southern. But yeah.
A Celtic temple.
A Celtic temple. And... look, I think it's a good pick, particularly in, this new era that we were just talking about a minute ago with, smaller number of stakes. But, you really look at the distance from what's even the closest temple, the other one in Preston in England, right? And, the how many stakes in Scotland? Like 6 or 7? Well, I guess 5 in Scotland, and then another. Yeah, and then another
There's
1 or
5 in
2 in
Scotland. Yeah.
in Ireland. I mean, there's your 5 stakes right there at least. And so, um, yeah, I think.
And there's not going to be a 6th stake anytime soon, though. That's the thing. It's going to be. They kind of are what they are. I don't think their stakes are growing or
They're just
contracting.
there.
They're just.
But hey, they exist, and they
That's fine.
they attend the temple, I imagine. So,
I mean, there's only one. The funny thing is, there's a stake for Edinburgh, but there's also only one ward for all of Edinburgh. It's the capital city of Scotland. It's a huge city, but there's still just one ward in the entire city. So, for one thing, you have like 12 missionaries in one ward because the city's so big. They still have to divvy it up to do the work. But I wonder if that goes against it. Like, there's one ward in Edinburgh, right? It makes sense because it's the capital of the country. But if you go over to Glasgow, where there's the Glasgow stake and the Paisley stake, you have a lot more wards that are like clustered around the metropolitan area in a more.
And I think that's why I kind of went with Glasgow in my original prediction. But taking it into account, I think what we were just talking about with Cape Coast is that centrality of location, and having those maybe more northern stakes like Aberdeen and others, being able to shave off an hour or two, kind of means a lot when you're looking to maybe not have, not plan for like a week vacation in the year where you go and do temple work for a week, like, a lot of European saints are accustomed to doing, particularly, in the last, like,
Well, they wouldn't have to do that. I mean, even now, like the Saints, well, the problem is the Saints up in Aberdeen, but like if you live in Edinburgh, when they go to the temple, they'll charter a bus and they go down to Preston. They leave early in the morning, go
same day,
work for the day and come back. And they can do same day, but that's Edinburgh down there. If you were coming from like Aberdeen or Inverness, all of a sudden, then it is it's a bigger undertaking for sure. But if you just think centrality is an issue, I don't think Glasgow or Edinburgh is the obvious choice. I think putting it in Stirling, which itself doesn't have a ton of members, but Stirling is a better central location for all of Scotland. Like if it's going to be a Scottish temple, and we're kind of building it under the assumption it'll probably be the only temple in Scotland forever. Stirling makes a lot of sense. It's a little bit closer to Dundee, better for Aberdeen, and not unrealistic for Glasgow or Edinburgh to travel.
So everyone shares a little bit of the commute.
So that's what I think. Everyone shares a little bit. That's what I'm thinking there. All right, we're going to one of my favorites, everybody.
Where?
And right now it tops the Temple Matrix charts, by the way. Appearing on 88% of lists. Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia.
Nice.
Yes. One I have predicted for years. Years and years and years and years. It's clearly my new Bentonville, Arkansas. I've explained the logic many times over. I don't know how else to explain it at this point, but I'll do it once more. Mongolia, huge country geographically, small country by population. Okay. It's extremely sparsely populated. And the only real major metropolitan area is the capital city of Ulaanbaatar. And it has 2 stakes. And then there's another, and that's it for the country. And then there is another district in the country. But 2 stakes and sparsely populated, formerly mostly basically communist controlled Mongolia is pretty good, I think, for what they've done. And if you run some numbers, you mentioned Cambodia and Thailand, which do have more stakes and more people in those countries. There are more Latter-day Saints like per capita in Mongolia than in these other countries that have had temple announcements made. Okay, so in my opinion, it's a more Mormon country than the other ones are in that sense. It's also crazy remote. I mean, they're assigned to the Hong Kong district. I don't know what's going to happen to the Hong Kong temple, quite frankly, because Beijing is slowly, taking away any semblance of democracy in Hong Kong. And right now it's closed for renovations. But I sincerely wonder by the time they're done if they'll be able to open it, or if it's going to run into some of these alleged issues we're having with the announced but now never heard about temple in Shanghai. That's more speculative, of course. But I think Mongolia, it makes a lot of sense. It would be definitely a smaller temple. I think it'd be a small temple like we see, going in Guam or Puerto Rico or Cape Verde or something like that. Not a big one. We're talking an 18,000 square footer tops, like that kind of thing. But still, a temple for the people there, so they don't have to it's still a developing country, and they have to travel and scrimp and save and get all the way down to Hong Kong. And I have to wonder if I think we're past that stage culturally in the church where we have those great stories of how you save all your money and travel far and spend a week off so you could go to the temple. Where I think now we're like, we've got the resources. Let's build the temples where the people are so they can have
That's
the
funny.
blessings
Did
of
I
the
mention that
temple
in the article, or
and
did you?
not.
Because I was definitely thinking that of just sort of like those kinds of faith promoting stories of the people that travel for a week, barefoot in the bush to make it to the temple. I mean, that's at this point, those kinds of stories are maybe more of an indictment on good demographics with temple placement rather than a faith promoting story. They served their purpose at one point, but I think you're right on the money. We're kind of in an era now where it's just like, why not?
We
We
might be
can
past
build,
that now. Like,
an 8,000 square foot temple or whatever, however many square feet is in the one, even in like Zimbabwe or wherever. And,
yeah.
We could just make it happen. It makes me wonder how many members currently in Mongolia are traveling to the temple or have, in the last, say 20 years even. And, how many more would there be, serviced by, a temple there? And boy, that could be a pretty dramatic increase, I think, percentage wise. No, it's
and it could follow the old President McKay mentality of let's build the temple and the people will come as well to it. And it's like, that's the whole, if you learn your history, the temple in New Zealand, the church was not huge in New Zealand. President McKay felt like we should build a temple out there.
Oh, I didn't know
and
that.
It'll be a beacon to the people and help strengthen the church in that area, more or less. Yeah. I mean, and think about it, back when they built it, there was no temple in Australia. There was no temple in Polynesia.
Yeah.
The only other temple, well, except for Hawaii, there was a temple in Laie. And then they built one down in New Zealand to serve as kind of
I was just going to say,
a nice outpost.
Yeah, I think the strongest case here that we keep on reiterating every 6 months is just that the remoteness factor. It's like it's far away from everything. So give it to them.
Didn't I promise though? Like I think I promised last time I was going to treat this like the one in Arkansas. Like, I'm done talking about Mongolia, and now that I've disavowed it, we will announce the temple. But I just can't. I can't bring myself to do it. No.
Got to get that W. All right, what's next here? That's a good guess. I think it'll happen, and I think the Matrix says. I mean, it's number one. That's pretty impressive. So we're not the only ones. Just kind of giving it the boost here. Here's my take. I tried this tactic with Lubumbashi and it failed, but I'm trying it again here in South Korea with Daegu. Look, the case that I'm trying to make is that, there is one, and we've talked about this already in this conversation. There is one city, Busan, which, has maybe the more critical mass of membership, the higher number of stakes, of units, that kind of thing. And, people that talk about predicting a second temple in the Korean Peninsula talk about Busan, I think, pretty exclusively. But I'm coming in and saying Daegu. I think there are,
well, and it makes sense for where it is.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, these countries, like, I think I'm thinking of Taiwan and Korea and Japan. They're really efficiently serviced by a lot of high speed rail. People travel a lot by rail, and so in my mind, I'm kind of thinking, okay, like that opens up the map a little differently. In terms of like where are we looking for potential temples. I think you could, easily make an argument for a sizable temple district of at least 12 stakes, handful of districts. No, I think that's for. Oh yeah, exactly. So there are 12 stakes and 6 districts in the Seoul temple district.
Correct, sir.
And I think you could do another 12 stakes and 6 districts. So it would be split exactly in half. For a potential Daegu temple. Not much else to say other than that. I mean, I've never been to Korea. I don't have any like nuances on transportation or, like, I guess, like the flow of people and
like
like how many people, more
country,
people go to the capital versus like not go to the capital or whatever. But, I think you can make a good case looking at the map anyway.
Well, I don't know if you're quite right on this. I think where the temple is going to go in Korea is going to be Pyongyang. I think that is going to be the location. They're just going to take that unfinished, giant, goofy hotel and make that into the temple. It's going to happen. All right. So my next one, It's going to be kind of my out there pick that I fully don't expect will actually happen in real life. But we're going to throw it out there anyway because we all get these. This is yours was Fort Worth, and mine is Cape Town, South Africa. South Africa has 2 temples already. You have the Joburg one I mentioned before, and then a temple in Durban that was only dedicated like last year. And the Durban district is not enormous, and Durban's closer to the Johannesburg area, it's on the East Coast, definitely than Cape Town. Cape Town's really far. If you put a map, I wanted to check this to be clear how far away Cape Town is from Pretoria or from Johannesburg, like just geographically, to say nothing of road conditions and development. It's about the same distance as like Flagstaff, Arizona to like Minneapolis.
Cape Town's like the Perth of South Africa.
Yeah. Cape Town's out there by itself. Now, the church is not huge there. Okay. I mean, obviously we are talking about how you could have, I just made an argument before for 2 stakes in a district meriting a temple, right? And Cape Town basically has that. But it is remote. I get it. I don't think on paper it makes a lot of sense. Like, yes, let there be a temple in this delightful place, but it's remote. Like it's a serious undertaking, even for the saints out there, to get up to Johannesburg to go to the temple. It's either a 15-hour drive. Rail traffic it does exist in South Africa, but I don't think it's the most efficient way of getting to Johannesburg. You can fly, and then you're talking about like your members are flying on a plane within their own country, which is not the biggest country in the world geographically, a perfectly well-sized one, but nothing like enormous, and you're flying to get to the temple. So I think I could see it happening only if we decide to have that outpost mentality again of just saying like, look, the Cape Town Saints are pretty far removed from all this, and Perth got a temple and it's isolated from the rest of Australia. Why not have one in Cape Town? And that's really
anybody else mentioned it on the Matrix. What's its score? Cape Town. Nope, it's oh no, I thought it was the bottom.
We are the only ones, along with Daegu. Also,
oh man, we're having fun with this list.
We're the best. But to be clear, so you mentioned Perth, though. I just checked out Perth. It's a little bit denser, and Perth is a big city, but there's 4 stakes right around Perth itself, and that's the entire temple district for Perth. And Perth is more isolated than even from the rest of its country than Cape Town is from the rest of South Africa.
My thought is,
so I'm not saying it's great, but
with the remoteness argument, and I think the isolation argument, which is totally a good one, it's probably going to be Mongolia before it's Cape Town, and like if that goes well, then
there we go.
We might see Cape Town kind of in the mix in the future, but.
If it goes well, if the Mongolians do their job, they're like, all right, we can give one to Cape Town then too, because those Mongols kept it real.
What's the church growth like in Cape Town area? Have you looked that up?
I don't think it's real. I mean, I could look. I don't think it's knocking anyone's socks off or anything like that. I can tell you very quickly, if you want to vamp for a second, I can go over to Kumora.com.
Sure. I'm drinking some Rooibos tea, which is from. I just learned this actually recently because this was a big tea on my mission. But there's only one place in the whole world where Rooibos tea bushes grow, and that is in a national park just north of Cape Town. So there you go. There's my vamp.
Okay, so the 2 stakes in Cape Town, the Cape Town stake was organized in 1984, and they did organize the Belleville, South Africa stake in 2014. So it took them 30 years, but they did get a second stake. And the George, South Africa district was in 2016. So the upside is that's
fairly recent.
There's some organization here. It's not huge, but
maybe after Liberia.
Okay. Whatever. Yeah, we'll see.
All right, what's next here? This was one that I did, I think just 6 months ago even. Yeah.
You did.
I think it's a good pick. I don't know if I'm the only one. What does the Matrix say? I'm talking about Osaka, Japan. Oh, can't find it. Osaka. I think I'm just looking too high on the Matrix. I'm having to keep on scrolling and scrolling. I don't even.
Oh, you're on the Matrix, dude. Just do Control F, man. Just do Control F. Osaka. Osaka
Okay, all
appears on
right. So again, I
19%
think I've
of
had a lot in
lists.
that sort of 19 to 25% range this time. Yeah,
Yeah.
Osaka. It's a big city. It's kind of right in between let me look here. It's about 2 hours away from Tokyo, I think on train. And there's what did I say? I think last time I said, speaking of trains, I think maybe I'm on a train kick here. I know that trains are very fast and efficient in Japan, making it easier for cross country travel too. Man, I am on this like romantic, I think, just train vision that I think, I'm imagining people
Oh
just
yeah.
doing old school like railway travel to the temple. but but yeah, so
Uh-huh.
I can't find where I'm talking about like the actual numbers though. Can you help me out here?
There are no numbers. Well, you do say, I mean, I get what you're saying. Osaka's kind of nicely, there's a temple in Fukuoka, there's a temple in Tokyo, and Osaka's a big city, and it's kind of there in
I'll tell you
between.
how many stakes could
I get it.
potentially be in a district there though.
Part, part of this level of fun. I'm assuming it's part of the
Tis.
Tokyo district. Let's find out for realty. Yes. Osaka is part of the
I must
temple
have
of
forgot to
the
put the numbers in. So
Osaka
like right
has
right in the area. I mean, there's the Kyoto stake,
I
the
got you.
Kobe stake, the Osaka. Looks like Osaka has 3 stakes, and then
There's
there's
3
another
stakes.
district kind of nearby, and
And
so
then
oh yeah, Nagoya.
Nagoya is kind of nearby. You've got one in Fukuchiyama.
I mean, it probably
I
wouldn't
could see. I
stretch
see
as
where you're
far
going
as
with this.
Shizuoka, but definitely Nagoya, Kyoto. A lot of iconic Japanese cities right there. I mean, it's just it's right in the middle of. Let's see, where's the other temple actually? Oh yeah,
The other
Fukuoka, right?
temple's in Fukuoka
Oh, it's
down
not
in
showing
the
on this map.
south.
Funny. But yeah, I think it's you could have look 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe eight stakes in a district. I think that's pretty. That's a good guess.
All right. I'm cool with it. I'm cool with it. Moving up. Back to Utah. This is another, I think, legitimate Utah prediction.
Nope.
Probably one that rankles
Yeah.
Joe more in terms of like, come on,
Let's hear
Utah,
your
enough with
case.
the temples already. uh, my case is southern Utah County, my friend. A land that is growing, a land that has lots of housing development going on, a land that still has plenty of members, even without that, but a land that does have a temple that's not super old at this point in Payson. But between Provo City Center and Payson, that's it. There's no other temple in between the two. Payson's at the southern end of the main developed area of it's Payson's like the last outpost of the Wasatch Front, really. I think even literally, I think it stops being area code 801 once you get to Santaquin. I think that's 435. Uh, so you got one in Payson, you got Provo City Center. I think a temple might go in Spanish Fork. Now, the area is not as densely populated as the stretch from Provo, maybe Springville-ish, going on up through Utah County, right? If you go south of Provo for 10 miles, it is not the same as going north of Provo for 10 miles in terms of what you see. That's fine. But it's developing quite a bit. I think the numbers could support it. I mean, if you look at this, you've got like there are nearly 30 stakes serving the Payson Utah Temple, and you could take off 13 of those. Provo City Center would still keep 21 stakes if you got rid of like Springville and Mapleton that's currently serve it. And Spanish Fork would have a 21 stake district, and it would even out the number of stakes between Payson and Provo City Center. Payson would drop a good number of those. They'd be down to like 16 stakes, but that area is also growing. And I think down there, let's be honest, it's growing with more Mormons. And so they're just going to have more stakes. I like it. I think it works. Spanish Fork, maybe Mapleton, but I think Spanish Fork. Spanish Fork makes the most sense geographically for the entire thing. So I'm pulling for this one, man. It's going to happen.
Not even seen it on the Matrix.
The only question is if it's enough. If it's enough to is it not on the Matrix?
That's what I'm doing.
Control F.
I'm...
You're right. It's nowhere on the Matrix. The Matrix is flawed.
The Matrix knows what I know. That's the
thing.
It's
listed under Springville / Utah County, Utah.
I want to bring it. Look, I think
31%.
Make a pretty strong...
I'm not saying Springville. No, not Springville.
Oh, it probably got counted as Springville.
Not Springville. I'm sorry. That's what it is. It's Springville. So
got it.
I'm not giving it to Springville. No sir. No how.
Here's what
no way.
I feel like I have 2
How do you?
points to counter, I think, your
Yeah.
decent case. The first one is along the Wasatch Front. I feel like there's got to be. I mean, Smithfield is an exception, obviously, because it's not along the Wasatch Front, but there needs to be, I think, a minimum quota of stakes that are, potentially reserved for a new temple district. And I think, 25 to 30 is probably that sweet spot. I think, and the reason I think that is because my second point, like look at Payson's temple, look at the one going into Twilla, look at the one going into Orem. These are all like 70,000 plus square footage. They are like literally designed to take in large amounts of people at one time. They're designed to, I think, be a temple for 30 to 40 stakes. And so, if we're looking at our prognostications that are smaller than that with the way that these Utah temples are being built with their size and everything, I don't know, man. I just think along the Wasatch Front, if we had a temple for every 20 stakes, that would be like way more temples than we currently have now. Which isn't a bad thing. I just mean like it's
But I
it's a
think in a
lot.
way, like we're splitting it up. Well, here's a great example though. Like if you look at the let's say the Mount
Mm-hmm.
Timpanogos temple up there in American Fork, right? It's got it pulls in from, let me see here. Right, currently 8 stakes of Saratoga Springs, more than that from Pleasant Grove. You've got 3 stakes in Linden, a whole bunch of stakes in Lehigh, a bunch of stakes in Eagle Mountain. There's a lot going on there. Now we know, of course, they're building a temple in Saratoga Springs. That's probably the farthest
Yeah.
one along of any of these new temples coming to Utah. That's going to chop off Eagle Mountain, Saratoga Springs, probably most of Lehigh, some of it. I don't know where they will draw the line, but that's going to take out a big chunk of that. Linden's curious because I guess it'll pull from some of Orem, maybe from some of even like the Provo Temples district. I don't know what they'll do, but you don't have a lot of space between Linden and then where the actual temple is in
Right.
American Fork right now. But I think they're like diluting. I think they're diluting it down. I think I know the Linden Temple will still be big as well. I'm with you that you have to build a temple big enough to be supported by the people. But I kind of think that's where it's going. If we're in Spanish Fork or Springville or somewhere
Yeah.
in between, I don't know.
I mean,
I think it works for
there.
me.
I think you do make a reasonable case. I just
I do know.
I have my own bias,
Yes,
and I
I
think
do. That's why I'm in charge.
where I think the word. Yeah,
See, I have my
go
bias.
ahead.
I had my bias too, but it's clear that like temples are just going up in Utah. It's like throw a
Right.
dart
No, and I
at
guess
this
that's
point,
that's
and
my
we're just
point.
getting
Like,
temples in
you
Utah.
know, I there was a time where like there were a lot of places that we kind of boosted Davis County a lot. Places in Utah that could really use a temple, that might existing temples had a large strain of like attendance numbers. And so, but now that those are maybe potentially cleared out, it's maybe important to remember we are a global church, and it's like, how many more temples is Utah going to get before kind of the rest of the world in one sense. But, I don't know. I
All the
guess
temples,
so.
my friend, all of them.
I guess so.
Every
Do we have any
temple
more
your heart
guesses? Are we
could ever
done? Oh no,
possibly imagine.
we got one more.
Last one here. We've got El Paso, which you've done before. How do you feel about El Paso?
Yeah,
We've made the case
I
before.
think you build an interesting case. I think with several different bullet points. I mentioned um, the most convincing one was sort of like if Pittsburgh can get one, then so can El Paso. Looking at the numbers, but I think the one that I've been thinking about just leading up to this podcast is the military base. I think having a temple, it goes back to what I was saying about, is it easier to go from one location to another? Certainly it's easier for the saints in Mexico right across the border to go to a temple in Mexico, which is why I think that the El Paso area temple was put in Mexico. But then here we have,
Yeah. And
that's true too. Yeah.
Juarez is
Juarez
a
is the
bigger
biggest and
city.
probably
I
has,
mean,
the bigger
yeah.
number of Mormons as well, membership. But if you have a contingency within El Paso that can't leave or can't, move across international borders for religious purposes, that's I don't know how many people that would serve. I mean, that maybe it's not as convincing of an argument all by itself, but it contributes to, I think, the larger case that you're building of just putting a temple right across the border. I mean, essentially, this would be the same metro area in one sense, to have like another second temple, kind of like Fort Worth. But
it kind of would be, yeah, but it would be
yeah,
being done for a lot less, I think than
yeah.
Lima or
So tell me why you think
Guatemala
it's a
City
good
or
guess.
Provo. And I'm with you. I don't think it's a slam dunk, like I've said before. But yeah, Juarez has 5 stakes in it. El Paso has 3. El Juarez is also a bigger city than El Paso, and so it's fine. But it is funny that El Paso, I mean, is assigned to Juarez. So if you live in the United States, you have to travel to Mexico to go to the temple, which is a very interesting kind of
Yeah, yeah.
socio-political conundrum in many ways. You don't think of things being that way. It's almost, I mean, you almost expect instead it would be forcing the Mexicans
Part
to
of me kind
travel
of likes
across
it like
the
that, to
country,
be honest.
the border to go to the temple in the States. But it's the other way around. But I mean, a lot of this is anecdotal, but I've had friends who like used to work for companies that they would have to go visit like maquiladoras in Juarez, and they'd stay in El Paso, and they'd have to have like an escort to go across the border and be safe to go into Juarez. Is famously racked
Hmm.
with drug and cartel violence, and they have a lot of problems. So I have to wonder. I don't know. If you're in El Paso, and I would actually love to hear about this, how realistic is it that people in El
Right.
Paso cross the border to go into Mexico to go to the temple? I'm curious about that, because if you don't, then all of them are going up to Albuquerque, 4 hours away, to do temple worship. And then that makes us ask the question, like, if we're pretending there's no temple in Juarez because it's unrealistic to go there or it's not safe to go there, then if
Right.
El Paso just stands alone, then maybe you put one in El
Well,
Paso.
it's
I know it's
definitely
still kind of
interesting to think about,
unlikely,
though.
but because it's not like an intercontinental or an international temple like, say, Cardston, right? If you're in Cardston, it's not just southern Alberta. There are parts of northern Montana that are part of the Cardston Temple District. But the border
Much
situation
different.
between the US and
Yeah.
Canada outside of COVID is much different than that between Juarez and the US and Mexico, obviously. I mean, if you watch the news. So that's why I think that can be a mitigating factor. Other than that, we just have honorable mentions if there's any of them that jump out. By the way, I want to say I think Austin might be the more likely pick for anywhere in Texas. If you look at like how we're building other temples in Texas right now, it's almost kind of funny that we've leaned on these other ones, because like the San Antonio temple, for example, has Austin in its district. It has all the places that'll probably be
Yeah.
part of the McAllen district when that's done. And those aren't huge numbers in terms of stakes as far as that. So as long as they were okay cleaving off Austin, you've got 5 stakes in the immediate Austin area, then one in Georgetown, one in San Marcos. I mean, that could easily that's as many stakes, if not
Yeah.
more, than what McAllen will
Or a
have.
would be El Paso.
Why could you not have one in Austin? Yeah, or it would be El Paso. Anyways, but that one's, I think, is that one even an honorable mention? Yeah, it is. It is. Other ones, we'll just go through them. Heber Valley, Utah. We've mentioned that one a lot. I think that could happen. Maybe somewhere in the East Salt Lake Valley at this point, somewhere like north of Sandy, I don't know, like Holiday area, maybe something like that. I don't know.
I think
Oslo,
Oslo deserves
Norway,
a
I think could
revisit. I think
happen.
it was a
Maybe.
prediction a few years ago that we put in, but that might be fun to recrunch the numbers on and kind of make a case.
Yeah.
I
Then we
think
got
that's a good
Buenos
one.
Aires number 2, Leon, Mexico. Wellington, New Zealand's an interesting choice. That could be fun, but I just wonder if that's biting off too much for the North Island. Like maybe put it in Christchurch just to share the load, and
Yeah.
so the South Island gets a temple.
Yeah,
I
I
don't
thought about
know.
that too. I think Wellington still is the
I
stronger
don't know.
case, though.
Here's one of your stronger ones, though. Somewhere like Kananga, or actually Mabuji Mai, DRC. I think that one could potentially have been an
Yeah,
actual pick this
I
time
agree.
around. The middle of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I don't see Kampala, Uganda happening, only because the temple in Nairobi is supposed to happen,
No.
and nothing's
Yeah.
happened with it in four
Yeah,
and a half
it
years.
needs some
So I
love.
don't know what's going on there.
Viña del Mar, man. It's like that's my Bentonville in some sense. I feel like that needs to happen though.
You love that one. Well,
Santiago
make
number
it happen,
2
Captain.
again,
Come
a
on.
number 2, temple, but I think that's a strong case.
Do the numbers support
Yeah, I mean
Santiago?
there's
Yeah, I'm
still
curious
like
about that.
77 stakes I think in the Santiago temple district. It's a lot.
It is
No,
huge, and the temple there's not big either. It's actually there's a huge number of stakes in Santiago. Yeah,
I think
we talked
both
about
of
Viña
these,
del Mar
both
before. I
chilly
could see
ones
that,
right
or
there could
just
be potentially good picks. Oh, Delta, that's kind of cool.
interesting choice.
Yeah,
Something down there, Fillmore, Millard County, sparsely populated, but membership. Um, Literally anywhere with people, the Philippines.
dude, yeah. I
just
think I
think
had like
that's
two
what's
nephews
going to
that
happen.
recently went on their mission there too. It's still going gangbusters. El
Yeah.
Salvador, another one there
What else?
potentially.
Another one there. La Paz, Bolivia is an interesting choice that I've seen floated around. We got the temple in Cochabamba. We're getting the one in Santa Cruz, which is east of
Mm-hmm.
Cochabamba. La Paz is over on the west, much closer to the Peruvian border. That's an interesting
I think the
choice. I wonder if
numbers are
that could
there, but
happen.
just like the one,
And then,
Venezuela has good numbers for what is it, Maracaibo, but a lot of the political
yeah,
situation
yeah.
kind of makes it impossible.
And then Austin, and then I think some of these back four we have are also strong candidates. Either way, Charlotte, North Carolina, even though there's a temple in Columbia, South Carolina, I think
Yeah,
I think that's a realistic pick.
probably could
Colorado
have written about it
Springs,
this
also
time.
the numbers could support it. It makes sense. Yeah, even though we have in the past. Monrovia, Liberia, I think is
Yeah,
strong, as is Missoula, Montana. I think we've written about in the past as well, if I'm not mistaken, which are also all
we
potential
shall
good
see.
choices. We'll see. What do you think,
When
listeners?
when do you
How
think they're
are
going to
our
announce them?
choices?
That's been
Oh, by the way, I should mention, by the way, Missoula, Montana. This says a lot about our honorable mentions. Missoula, Montana is number 4 on the Matrix. Monrovia,
all
Liberia
right.
is number 5. And the Mubuji Maya in the DRC is
If you
9, and
think we're not
Colorado
going to
Springs
take
is
the
10.
W, if
And
those get
and
announced, if you think we're
Austin,
not going to take the W, you're wrong.
yeah, and Austin is number 2.
All right. Well,
So I think the only one which we have not, we said anywhere in the Philippines. The only one we never said clearly was like
yeah.
another one in Mexico City proper. But that's kind of like the one in
Well,
Puebla
see, but I
that's
think
already
I
it's been
think
announced.
Leon is kind of the more obvious choice there.
All right. And just so you know, some of the ones that are off the list, if we're talking Matrix, that have better, you got another one in Chile, the Madagascar one, maybe one down over in Iquitos, Peru, Charlotte, Cape Coast, we mentioned, Harriman, which we've talked about before, southwestern Salt Lake Valley, Heber City, La Paz, Edinburgh, Osaka, Jakarta, Oslo. Then it gets down to lists where people are saying Vienna. Vienna is not going to happen in Austria. They announced a temple in Budapest. Vienna is not going to happen anytime soon, people.
It's like
I'm
Bratislava.
sorry. You don't get that. That'd be hilarious if they built one in
Yeah, right.
Bratislava, but not in Vienna.
Oh man.
Take that. If you want to know some fun trivia, folks, before we go, good like pub quiz type stuff, Bratislava is the only national capital that borders 2 countries.
Wow. I like
There you
those
go.
kind of factoids.
Yes.
I
There you can
shall.
take that one and use that
That's going to the bank
for
forever.
fun. And people and your friend. By the way, I mentioned Christchurch. Christchurch is the lowest ranked one on the entire matrix. So good for me. I like someone said Brazzaville, the Congo. Brazzaville is the capital of the Republic of the Congo, and it sits
Kinshasa.
across the Congo River from Kinshasa, which is the capital of the Democratic
Yeah.
Republic of the Congo,
Yeah,
which
it's
had a
not going to
temple.
happen.
Okay. But
There
I
you
like the one that
go.
says Barcelona on the Matrix. Whoever had that one,
I'm just waiting for
good for you.
The
You are
Andorran
correct.
temple.
Dude, there's a branch in Andorra, a branch. And when I was on my mission, a missionary was the
Oh,
branch president. Now they
oh
finally have a
man.
member who's the president. But
Good
no,
old Europe.
don't get crazy, Joe. Take it easy. All right, folks. Well, this always winds up being longer than we expect it to be. And enjoy the predictions. This is a great episode because it has no evergreen value
It's done.
whatsoever other than entertainment in like
Well,
4 days. So,
it's a pleasure as always,
so
talking with you, Jeff.
thank you, Joe. Good to see you, my friend. Thanks for listening, everybody. Please offer your comments with this on the Facebook post for it, wherever. Follow us on social media. Support us on Patreon. Be our friend as we wish to be your friend. And until we meet again for our General Conference recap, be well, be holy, and be happy. Bye-bye.